and welcome to the Comms Collective, the podcast that puts communications leaders in the mission-led world right where they belong, centre stage. I'm your host, Vishnu Sontu. I've spent more than 20 years working in communications, from campaigns and crisis comms to leading big brand moments in the charity and public sector. And if there's one thing I know, it's that comms professionals are often behind the scenes, but their work shapes everything. That's why I created this podcast, to bring voices, stories, and hard-won lessons to the front. Every episode, I'll be joined by a director of comms, a head of comms, or a sector leader who will share what it really takes to make comms work, the highs, the lows, the wish I'd knowns, and the strategies that help us keep going in a world where budgets are squeezed and expectations are sky high. We'll talk about strategy on a shoestring, inclusive storytelling that resonates, internal comms that actually works, and how we look after ourselves and our teams when the pressure is on. So whether you're leading a team or just starting out in sector, or simply curious about what goes behind the campaigns that you see in the headlines, you're in the right place. Today, I'm thrilled to kick off things with Purvy Patel, Marketing and Communications Manager at Age UK, Hillingdon, Harrow and Brent. We'll be talking about Purvy's career, what makes her great at her job, and what is next on her journey. So let's dive in. Hi, Purvy. Welcome to the podcast. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Purvy. She is passionate about driving impact in the charity sector. After a successful corporate career leading high-stakes projects and delivering operational and marketing transformations for global brands, she's pivoted to the not-for-profit world to align her skills with purpose. She does a lot of volunteering and uses her skills locally and globally, from teaching teenagers to befriending. She's also a keen traveller who loves exploring cultures and traditions, and she's just been to Peru, so I'd love to hear more about that later. So, Purvy, how are you doing?
I'm really good, thank you.
So it'd be lovely to hear a little bit about your career journey and how you found your way into comms, and then how you found your way into the charity sector.
So I accidentally fell into marketing after I graduated. I thought it seemed like an interesting career, and I got my first role in publishing. From there, I moved to different organizations that were of interest, but predominantly it was corporate work. I'd never thought about the charity sector. And at that stage, when you're very young, it's about chasing money, promotions, and brands. I was lucky enough to work at some really great brands. I've also worked at Sky TV, Cable and Wireless, and BP Retail. And so I really got some great grounding across the broad marketing area, which is quite unusual. You tend to specialize in something, but I was lucky, from retail marketing to communications to digital. I've worked across most of the marketing mix, which I think really helped me when I decided to pivot out of my career. So I was in my 40s actually when I got made redundant for the first time. You've always been in organizations which restructure. I was in a FTSE 100, which every 18 months you could set your watch, they would restructure, and you saw people go, but it never actually happened to me. And now I can say, honestly, it was a blessing, because I was able to step back and say, what is it that I want to do? And I didn't really think that corporate life was for me anymore. I just felt, I don't know if it was disillusionment or whether it was chasing share price, working and seeing constant restructures and changes in strategy, which can be quite chaotic as employees in an organization. One of my friends said, "You've really been a great role model for advocating volunteering work." Said, "You always speak about it when I say, what were you up to at the weekend? And you said, oh, I did this or I did that." And he said, "Why don't you try a career in the charity sector?" I said, I'd never actually thought about it. And it's that's which made me want to pivot my career. Apart from my voluntary experience, as you mentioned, I'm a volunteer teacher. One of my longest roles has been donning my Wellingtons, and I work on a charitable farm close to home. And I've been doing that for about 20 years, and I love it. I'm a keen vegan, growing vegetables based on organic principles and treating Mother Earth in a good way and not using chemicals and pesticides. It all plays into what I like doing in my spare time. So coming back to this pivot journey, it seemed quite a logical thing to do. I'd never thought about it, but I thought I'd needed some qualification because I thought I couldn't do it. And at that time, there weren't any organizations helping you. So I did a global fellowship course. It was an international course run by an organization called Moving Worlds. They do a lot of mission driven work and courses and putting you in touch with global organizations. And I did that and it opened my eyes. It was really good to learn. You're never too old to learn. Every day is a school day. And I met people from across the globe doing different things in that sector. So I feel it opened my horizon to what was possible out there and where I could use my transferable skills.
Mhm.
And that's when I landed at Age UK.
The national
The Age UK
organization.
National, which is how we met. I thought, okay, I'll take a risk and see, are they willing to take a risk on me? Because I've just got corporate behind me. And at that time, I didn't really know how much charities need those commercial, corporate
Mm,
performance skills. I think they do lack in some charities. I didn't realize I had value to give. I was a little bit ignorant on that front. One of the things I really learnt was as you get older as well, and you've had all that life skills and that experience, you have the confidence to negotiate.
mm,
And I've never really done that in the corporate world per se, but I did it here. The job was advertised for 5 days, but I decided I only want to work 4 days now. So I want to have more time for my charity and voluntary work, but I still want the 5 days salary. And I was able to negotiate that. I took on a 6-month contract and I ended up working there for 3.5 years and
oh,
becoming
wow.
permanent.
Mm,
So it was a great experience for me. It gave me great work-life balance. I was able to use the skills and use my brain.
mm,
And I also, at that time, didn't realize how much ageism was out there as well. I
yeah.
realized that a little bit later. So I'm really glad I was able to pivot at that time.
Mm,
So my advice would be anyone who wants to pivot their career, you don't necessarily need to do courses. If you can show intent by doing some voluntary work, showing commitment, I think there are real need for the sort of skills we've got from corporate world. So don't think they're not transferable. They absolutely are.
yeah. And what have you found the difference in working for not for profit for charities as opposed to corporates, like per person? But how are you feeling about it all now?
I think be prepared to take a massive pay cut if
Hmm.
you're going to do this. So it's got to be a time that's right for you financially. It's not right for everyone. Be prepared for less resources in most charities. What I was used to budget wise and having technical departments which were experts in matters like someone who could do your data mining,
Mm,
someone who could do your segmentation. You have a lot of that in the corporate world,
mm,
research budgets. You don't really have it in a lot of charities. So I think you've got to really pull out all your skills from your toolkit. Being a sort of generalist marketeer, I've used a lot more of the breadth of my skills in the charity world than I ever did in corporate, where you became an expert in an element of marketing because you'd have a digital team or a direct marketing team. And in that way, I've really enjoyed the variety.
yeah. It's great to be able to still keep your skills as well and be able to
Yeah.
use them, like you say, as a generalist. One minute you're doing digital work, and next minute you're thinking about leaflets and patient information and things like that. And I know when you were at Age UK, I think you worked on the commercial side and
Yeah,
retail, was it? Yeah.
yeah, and that's why it was a really good first move into the sector because
Yeah.
I didn't work in the core charity on the lobbying, fundraising
Mm,
side or the international side that you worked in.
mm,
It was on selling services and products,
mm,
and all the profits then went into the charity. For me, that gave me a real meaning to why we were selling these things because they were specially designed for older people. We were thinking about our service users, the person who's going to benefit, but at the same time, we were doing it in an ethical way. and ways that would help them. So it wasn't all just digital because a lot of our customers wanted paper. So we
Yeah,
made sure that things were written down as well for them. So I think the purpose made it more meaningful to actually then sell those services.
absolutely. And now working at Hillingdon, Harrow and Brent, so it's a more localized service. What is the difference? What's your sort of day to day now compared to before?
So day to day now, I would say I'm even using more of my general skills than I did with Age UK National. And
Fantastic.
part of that, I think part of that is because local Age UKs, which is what Hillingdon, Harrow and Brent is, there's about 120 of them.
Mm,
So we all have designated areas. We're standalone. So we have to make sure that we balance our books. We have to manage our own P&L. So there is pressure to get your grants or your funding, different revenue streams, because you're not getting handouts from anywhere. You're not necessarily getting money from Age
yeah,
UK National to fund yourselves, although you benefit from some of the partnerships. For example, National have been working with the Big Knit and Innocent Smoothie. We've been part of that. When we've contributed hats to Innocent Smoothie, we've had funding for every hat donated. So we do benefit that way from national partnerships, but day to day, it is very hard work.
yeah. And so it's a federation model. So you have the name and the brand, but you have your own chief executive and you have your own fundraising that you have to do and
Exactly.
marketing.
Exactly that.
Yeah,
And we also have the same sort of mission in terms of what we do. We are all about old people, but we're really targeted at our local services. What do our
yes,
local older people need? And that's where our focus is, working
yeah,
with our funders and our stakeholders.
yeah, fantastic. And just, 'cause I've not talked about this on the podcast yet. You and I have been involved in like diversity and inclusion kind of work within Age UK, both nationally and otherwise. So, how do those skills, what you know now, help with the local community service? 'Cause I imagine in the area that you're in sort of West London, it's very diverse. So, how are you able to support older people in that way?
Yes, you're right. We do have a very diverse community. I actually live in Hillingdon, have been for over 25 odd years. I grew up in Harrow and I've got family across Brent. So I know our catchment really
Yeah,
well in terms of the diversity. And I think it is very hard sometimes with the services to target them. But what I'm really proud of is some of the things and initiatives that we've done at a local level to address that. So, for example, we have a Carib Club that was started by one of our community team coordinators. That really is about people from the background in the Caribbean coming together where they can share stories. And we celebrate things like Black History Month. Recently, when National were doing an event in London, some of our service users went along, and one of them actually told her story being part of the Windrush generation and how she came across to the UK and her story and her journey. And I think these stories are so important. So we share those on our website and we also celebrate those. So when we post about it, it is about our service users. We also run a hub in Harrow, and we're getting more diverse people because it's a different dynamic to some of the areas of Hillingdon that we run. So we're trying to build on that. And hopefully next year, we're going to be doing an event targeted more at some of our residents and service users. This year we did a daytime disco in Hillingdon, but one of the things we did notice, we had about 10% diversity. And while that's a start, we felt that if we did some activity out of our core Hilling area into Brent or Harrow, we'd probably attract more people who don't know about us or who are a little apprehensive. That event has to be targeted at their needs, what they would like to do. So we've got some plans for that, and that will be something we plan next year. So as I learn more about people and what they want and their needs, we'll be able to do a lot more.
yeah. And this is very much understanding your audience, isn't it? Who they are, what they need from you, what kind of channels do they use? Because it's not all digital. I think as charities, we've moved into the digital space because it feels like a cheaper option. But actually, people need paper things. They might need adverts in newspapers, like local papers or billboards in the local area or on buses, because there's a need to communicate with people in a different way.
Exactly. And we also find that when you're at a local level, you don't have the budgets to go on billboards and things. So we found working with local partnerships is a good way. The supermarkets have always been really supportive of us, our local supermarkets, and they've really supported some of our events and our community groups.
Mm,
At the same time, libraries as well. A
yeah.
lot of older people go to libraries, they still read books. So we've had to be really creative with our budget
Mm,
about how we speak to these different groups
mm,
and also get the message out there because we are there for our service users and running those services,
mm,
giving them the free advice and information that they need.
yeah. And I think a little plug for UK generally and all the local services. Just my experience of trying to support my mother during COVID. I was anxious that she wasn't getting out. I rang up the Enfield Age UK, which is where she lives, and they've got a booklet on exercise and what to do in the home. And they actually went and hand delivered it to her. And it was so lovely because it was just that attentiveness of thinking about older people and understanding the situation they might be in. And during COVID, it was such an unknown time for everybody. That way of being able to support older people if they're feeling anxious was just incredible for me.
Yeah, and I think that's another service we do is the Good Neighbour Scheme. People who will drop in and do your shopping or collect your medicine from the
Yeah,
pharmacy, help with the post or admin. Those sort of things help with isolation. They
yeah,
help with loneliness. That just that touch with somebody. And I think that's really important, especially when so many services are being cut. It's good to know that there are local Age UKs looking out for their local people.
yeah. And I think exactly as you say, as local services are being cut, this is what's replacing it, isn't it? Local charities that are
Local.
doing the work.
So I think it's really important the work we do now more than ever. Sometimes globalization has impacted some of this. Before you had your friends, your neighbors all in these close conurbations,
Mm,
and people would pop in and make sure you're okay, a bit like we did during the pandemic. On our close, we made a WhatsApp group and people would say, do you want shopping done to some of the older residents? We'd drop it on their doorstep, all sorts of things that people did, not just on our close, but up and down the country. With globalization, families move away. People have to go far away for jobs or abroad for jobs. Sometimes you can get really lonely at home because you don't have that network anymore.
definitely. Is there any one campaign that you're particularly proud of and why?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say there's few campaigns that we've run. I think a campaign that we probably ran around Silver Sunday. And for those who don't know, Silver Sunday is a national day to celebrate older people and to do activities that can be fun, engaging, but also remove loneliness and have a sense of community. So people are getting together to celebrate older people. And this was our first year of doing Silver Sunday at HHB. We decided to do a daytime disco. The campaign revolved around getting people to know about the event.
Mhm.
And the challenge was how do we sell tickets when people don't have to come to our offices? Because some people can't get to our offices or don't always get to some of our community groups across the borough. So we used a digital platform to sell tickets. It was a first for us. In terms of the campaign, we did a lot of online work because we wanted to target the children of older people, friends of older people who would see it. We had such an amazing response to it. The event was a sellout and we had such lovely comments. This campaign was very special because it's about who we are and what we do.
Mm,
It's our mission to look after older people. Probably the feedback that we collected, the one that stuck out for me the most was this is the first time I've been out since the pandemic.
oh,
And
wow.
it's one of those which almost made me want to weep,
Mm,
but also made me smile to think we've made a difference. that someone has not been out to an event or a party, because that's what to some people the disco was, because there was food, music, fun,
Yeah.
laughter. And that was their sort of first time that they felt they were able to come to an event since
Mm.
then. I
Yeah.
met some ladies who didn't know anyone and were brave enough to come alone. I thought that was fantastic. And when they saw some of the other activities we were able to talk to them about during the event, and they said they'd come along, we thought, well, that's two less lonelier people.
Yeah. And probably they made friends while they were there and,
They were, two
you
of them
know.
made friends because they'd both come alone, so they
Mm.
got talking and they decided to come to some of our clubs. We run a plethora of clubs across our boroughs,
Yeah.
and it was lovely that they felt welcome enough and brave enough that, "Okay, we can even come to a club now." That's why that campaign was really special, and also we didn't really spend money on it. We used all free channels, all
Oh,
different
brilliant.
online
Yeah.
local boards, libraries, supermarkets, wherever older people were, even the local bowling
Mm.
clubs were there with our posters and
Yeah.
things. And that's what I mean is you have to be so versatile in a small
Mm.
charity and think creatively, even more than when you've got the big budgets, which I've had when I've been at previous organizations. So I think that's why that campaign was particularly special for me.
Mm. I think you're right. When you've got barely any budget, it does challenge you to be more creative and think a little bit outside the box. I think actually consider your audience much more, like you said, following logically where they would be as opposed to let's put everything on Facebook. Although we have lots of silver surfers now, it's not the same. I think that personal touch of seeing something in a place that you regularly go to. And there's also an element of trust as well. Because I think now with the internet, it feels, particularly for older people, that they're being targeted and all sorts of strange things are happening. If they see something in a local library, they're more likely to want to go because it feels more trustworthy, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. One of the things we really benefit from is our brand. When we've talked to local businesses to see if they would support or help or donate, we had great support. No one said they wouldn't speak to us. That's the power of our brand and what we
Yeah.
do at a local level. Everyone was willing to give us time to at least hear us out. And to me, that's important. The power of the brand locally is important just as much as it is nationally.
What about the toughest challenge that you've had in this sector in terms of what you faced in communications and how did you handle it?
I think there's probably two ways I'd answer that question. When I pivoted to this sector, I found it quite a challenge because of the infrastructure I was used to, the
Mm.
budgets and all of that. And that takes quite a lot of getting used to. That was one challenge. In terms of communications, I think it's about how creative you can be. It's not just going for digital all the time because it's the easy option, it's the cheap
Mm.
one. It's about thinking about your audience. It's really forced me to think about it and where do they actually go? The day in the life of one of our service users who comes to our activity clubs, where would they go? What would they do? What channels would they use? And it's really forced that level of granularity that perhaps I didn't quite have to do before because I am being challenged every day about how much of that pound I use is
Mm.
bringing value to the charity.
I don't know if you've got, I know you've had a team in the past, but I don't know if you've got a team just now. How do you look after yourself and your team in times when there's crisis or high pressure? And then you can talk about now or previously as well, but how do you cope with that?
The team is me and one other, and we also have a couple of volunteers who support us, which is great, who give up their time and want to do marketing. They've had a background in, etc. I think the way we do it is I always feel it's important not to lose your sense of humor.
Mm.
So fun is something I think it's really important. It breaks the pressure. And so we do that and we talk a lot. Even if we're remote and you're working from home on different days in the office, I always touch base. I think that personal touch of just picking up the phone is really important. I know we've got into this culture of emails all the time, but emails don't always let you know how stressed the other person's feeling. But if you pick up the phone, you can hear that stress in their voice. So I think I do a lot of that. And I also offer to help if people need support with prioritization. So I think those are the tools that I use. Keep talking, give it personal touch on the phone, and don't just do everything by email.
Yeah, I think you're so right because often I think you're like me, more old school where we are used to picking up the phone. When I write an email, I've probably not got across what I want to say. So I'll always do that and then go, can I call you? Can I have a chat with you? I think I communicate better if I can see that person or hear that person and we're having a chat. Also, as you say, it's that personal touch, isn't it? I think the problem we have now, and it's probably new generations and their way of working, is it's messaging, it's email. They won't pick up the phone. I was at a conference last week where we talked about Gen Z, where it's a totally different way of working. And we have to understand each other, but we also have to support them to try new things and try different ways of working.
In the digital age, whereupon I was always office based in most of my career until more recently, especially
Mm,
after the pandemic.
mm,
And I'm used to just swinging my chair around and saying, "Oh, by the way, Vishni, what do you think of that?" Or
mm,
bouncing ideas around. I really used to get so much value from doing that and
yeah.
just hearing conversations. And I do feel we've lost a little bit by hybrid unless we make that effort of picking up the phone when we're at home to ring another colleague who's at home and just saying,
Mm,
"What do you think? What are your ideas?" Sometimes people can feel a little bit isolated or their ideas don't matter. Unless you, as a manager, tell them or as a colleague, say, "I do value your opinion. What do you think?"
as you say, the hybrid way of working is not perfect. We all have to work hard to kind of like make sure it does work in the way that we need it to work. But it has its advantages, that loss of connection, especially with people who don't know what it was like before COVID. You know, you could talk to people and they have no idea how we used to work before. So they won't remember those techniques.
They are techniques.
Yeah.
Just sitting and listening and
Yeah.
absorbing conversations when you're new into an organization. And I have to say, one of the things I did find a little bit challenging when I moved to Age UK HHB, they have a very hybrid style of working, which is what employees want. It's great. But I was used to Age UK National before the pandemic, where everyone came in. In my team, I went in every day. I was so used to just swinging my chair around saying, "Oh, what do you think of that?" or asking a question. And I learned much more quickly when I moved from corporate to that first role. I felt I learned much more in a shorter period. Here, it's taken me a little bit more to learn about the organization because I don't always see my colleagues or I can't always swing round. Eventually, you get there, like anything you do, but it's taken me a little bit longer. And I found that a little bit of a challenge when
Yeah.
I first started.
And thinking about the future of comms now, what's the one thing you would like to see the sector do differently in its approach to comms?
I think more about your target audience. We used to have mass comms and mass targeting, and then we moved into segmentation and one on one and personalization. Sometimes with comms, we go into blanket comms again. Older people aren't just one homogeneous group.
Mm,
As you said, you get silver surfers who are online, digitally savvy, and want to deal with you online. But there are people who've never been online, felt left behind, don't own a mobile phone, never will own a mobile phone. There's different levels of people on communication. Take my mother, for example, 85 years old. She's not going to appreciate you sending her a text message with a link, even though she has a mobile phone. She'd rather have a letter through the post telling her about her winter fuel allowance and the changes happening so that she can read it, hold on to it, and then show it to one of us and say, "Is this changing and what's happening?" and have a discussion because that's
mm,
part of engagement, isn't it? Keeping up with the times. I would like to have communications thinking about the end person and
mm,
not what's always easier for you. That's how we leave people behind, stop being inclusive, and don't reduce isolation
mm.
and people feeling left out.
Yeah, and I think you're right about that digital space where everything, even banking, is
Yeah.
all digital. My mum went into the bank the other day and they literally forcing her to get the app and she wouldn't even know what to do with it. Then they don't want her to share the details with me. And it's like, but then you're not letting her take money out the bank or to do anything with you. It's horrific. And you think to yourself, things that we take intuitively, there's going to be a generation who can't. And then the same thing will happen to us as technology moves on. We're going to be behind the times in the future. So you're
Exactly.
right. Think about your audience really carefully.
Don't just assume everyone wants to do Instagram and Facebook and
Yeah.
likes and all of that because they don't.
So what do you do when you switch off from work and recharge? What are the things? I'd love to hear more about that.
So I don't work Fridays, as I told you, lifestyle choice, which pivoting my career has helped me to accommodate. I am a befriender for a local charity based in the area I live in. They have offices on the high street. It's a really small organization at a local level run by 5 amazing people. They match you up with befrienders, and I do that. And I spend half a day with my befriender.
So that just sort of hanging out with somebody, just making
It is
friends.
for her needs. So it's always based on their needs and what that person
Mm,
actually needs. So her needs was getting out and about because she was a carer for her late husband. For about 5 or 6 years, her life was around him.
mm,
Barely leave the house because he couldn't be left alone and things. So it was, for me, amazing to be able to help and support someone locally to just get out and about, to have visits. We've done everything from go on the lavender fields and never judge a book by its cover, because there was this person at 90 years old as she was then and said,
wow.
"Oh, look, there's a tractor ride. Shall we do that? I used to do that when I was little and I lived up north." "Are you sure? Because it's gonna be a rough ride." There was me thinking, "Are you sure?" And that was like, "Don't be so soft," I was being told. "Come on, get on that tractor." And she was leading me, and we went on this tractor ride all the way around the fields, and the adventures we've had. It's really taught me not to judge a book by its cover, but also this whole thing around ageism, how there is so much noise about over 50s being on the golf course. We're not on the golf course, but we're not being hired. Our
Mm,
skills are not being valued. Our experience is not being valued. And there is ageism out there
mm,
for both men and women. But I think it is worse if you've got a lot more barriers against you. So female, it's always harder. And then you've got age as well.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
so I think for me, I really enjoy doing that, and I love going to the farm. It keeps me close to nature on a Sunday,
Mm,
and it aligns with my values around being vegan, so it plays
yeah.
into that, and getting
uh,
fresh air. It's just being outdoors and switching off my brain and using
mm,
my hands and body, and I think sometimes you need to switch off your brain. A good way of that healing journey is giving back.
yeah.
For me, I really enjoy that. I enjoy bringing happiness to people because
Mm.
when I arrived here, people were kind to me.
Yeah. And we should say that the conversation we had before starting the recording was that you and your family got turfed out of Uganda by the then dictator president Idi Amin. So
Yeah.
what was it you said you came over as a family with what, £25?
So the
Yeah.
rule was every family could take out £25 and you could take one suitcase per person. You had 90 days to leave, or the threat was you would be killed. The threat was real because
Yeah.
on most street corners, I remember men in uniform with guns.
Mm.
Even as we were leaving the airport, people rifling through your things because you could have been taking more money or jewelry or assets, which was valuable and worth more than the £25.
And we should explain that this is people of Indian origin that were being turfed out
Exactly.
of the country.
Yes, it
Yeah.
was, they call us the Ugandan Asians, and I'm proud to be part of that
Yeah.
cohort because
Yeah.
I think it's a very successful cohort, and we worked terribly hard. That generation, like the Windrush generation,
Yeah.
they people like my mum and dad who came here did anything they
Yeah.
needed to do to put food on the table, and I think we're stood on their shoulders,
Yeah.
my
Absolutely.
generation and my kids. And that's why we're in the position we are, because of their sacrifice.
And like you said, all those things that you've learned from that time has become who you are as a person, and your work ethic, things that you like to do is giving back, because as you say, you knew that people were kind to you when you got here as well,
Yeah.
which is in the current climate, that's really nice to hear.
I think you could focus on the 70s when we arrived. We did have the skinheads. We did have the P word branded on your property, go home. You had all the racism. But if you just look at that, you miss the big chunk of people who were giving up their time at the airport, making sure when you came out, have you got warm clothes? It's really cold in this country. Do you want a cup of tea and a biscuit? And have you got somewhere to stay? And, I'm a really spiritual person. And one of the things that we are always taught by any sort of priest and any sermon I've been to is when someone comes to your house, give them some water. So it's like being hospitable, give them a place to sit and give them sweet words. And that's what we got from a lot of people when we did come. It's important not to let that hate and racism overshadow the good that people did do. And it's a two-way street. People were good, and in return, we were good back in the sense that we tried to embrace the British way of life. We worked hard and we tried to give back through charity donations or giving up your time. And I think if people had more of give and take, we would have less of that animosity fueled by people who've got nothing better to do than to fuel hatred and division.
I think that's exactly what was happening. Purvy, that was amazing. And I think we could have talked for so much longer. Thank you so much for that.
Before you go, can I just mention one thing? There are people on LinkedIn who want to pivot their career, who come from corporate world and want to move to the charity world. There is an organization called Better Placed, and it's run by a lady called Maya Bose. And she is on LinkedIn. Her surname is spelled Bhose. And what she does is find 6-month placements for people like us from corporate background to work in a charity for 6 months. And she's done that for Age UK as well, someone who's done that for 6 months. So it helps you with that transition pivot, because sometimes you can't always get a charity job because people think, well, you've never done any charity work. How will you fit in? How will you manage with less budgets? This is a stepping stone. You get paid, and at least that way you get some experience. When I was doing it, there wasn't anyone out there, but I know this lady, Maya Bus, who is doing it to help people. So I just wanted to say that for people who need some help.
And how do people get in touch with you if they want to hear more?
I am on LinkedIn, so you can get in touch with me. My contact details are on there. So please feel to reach out about anything to do with pivoting, corporate, charity. I'm more than happy to have a conversation. That's what we're about, right, Vishni? We're communications.
Exactly. That's it for this episode of the Comms Collective. A huge thank you to Purvy Patel for sharing her insights and experience. I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation. Don't forget to follow the podcast on your favourite apps so you never miss an episode. It would mean the world to me if you could rate and review the show. It helps bring more comms professionals like you to these stories. And of course, join the conversation online, share this episode on social media and tag us using the Comms Collective. Thank you for listening. I'm Vishnu Sontu, and I look forward to bringing you more honest, inspiring conversations next time.